Love Jiffy, okay? We're not following these directions. These corn muffins, you see that? We're not following those directions. It's time to jazz it up. It's time to she-cook it. Hey y'all, welcome back to She Cooks. Thank you so much for choosing to cook with me. I'm Tay. So today is the second recipe of my summer series. Just to remind you guys, my summer series is all recipes featuring Black cooking. For today, I am going to be making cornbread. Like, honestly, when I say cornbread, everyone's eyes should have lit up. Like, who doesn't like cornbread? Like, cornbread is the staple thing. It goes great with chili, pinto beans, black-eyed peas, fried cabbage, collard greens. Like, I honestly could just eat cornbread with whatever. Like, y'all know when you go to like a Black-owned barbecue spot or a soul food spot, they're gonna ask you if you want some cornbread or some white bread. Like, cornbread should always be at a cookout. Cornbread should always be at Thanksgiving. Cornbread should always be at Sunday dinner, because it's like rolls for people. It's biscuits, it's cornbread. Like, who doesn't like cornbread? If you don't like cornbread, no shade, no tea. That's you, okay? Like, I can't fault you on it. You don't like it, but maybe you should try my recipe and maybe you will like it. I don't know. My recipe today was actually inspired by a Black-owned restaurant in Cleveland. It's called Zanzibar. If you guys have not been there, please try it, especially those of you who live in the Cleveland, Akron, Canton area. Make your way to Zanzibar. There's 2 locations in Cleveland. It's delicious. A lot of restaurants typically provide like some sort of bread before they get their meals, and so at Zanzibar they provide little cornbread muffins, and they're delicious. So they have a sweet potato cornbread muffin and a blueberry cornbread muffin, and it's delicious. Like, I could honestly just eat those and be fine. Like, I don't even need to order. I decided to make a sampler of cornbread, I guess. So like, I'm picturing this in my restaurant when I own it, or a food truck or cafe, whatever I'm gonna own, because I'm gonna own one. But this will be on the menu. It'll be like Tay's, I don't know. You guys give me some ideas on what I should call this assortment of cornbread. I'm making 3 different types of cornbread. I want to give you guys options. They're all delicious. You can make all 3 if you want, or you can make one. I'm going to break down each recipe. So really, if you think about it, it's like 3 recipes in one video. They're all quick too. Like, you guys can make them all at the same time. But I know for me, I am an indecisive person, and I like options. Like, I'm that person at the restaurant who will ask for the sampler because I want a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. So if you guys feel the same way, you're gonna enjoy this recipe. Summer series recipe number 2 is my assortment of cornbread. Please, someone provide me with options of what I want to call this little menu item. Right now, all I have is She Cooks Tay's cornbread sampler. But if you guys have any ideas, drop it in the comment section, okay? Because I'm always up for a new idea, okay? I love new ideas. And if I don't like it, I may not respond to your comment. Just kidding. I will always respond. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I also have all of my recipes available on my Instagram page at SHEcooks_cooking with Tay. Let's get into it, cooks. It's time to get that cornbread. Here's a quick look at all the ingredients you'll need for this recipe. I will, of course, provide all the ingredients and measurements in my description box. So first up is my jalapeno cheddar cornbread. I am going to be cooking it in a cast iron skillet today. So the first thing I want to do is prep my cheese and chop up my jalapenos. For those of you who are frugal grocery shoppers like myself, I always like to buy block cheese just because it's a few cents cheaper and it's the same amount of cheese. So if you've seen any of my previous videos where I use jalapeno, you'll know that I mentioned to avoid cooking with the seeds of the jalapeno if you don't want a spicier meal. So for me, I don't want the cornbread to be too spicy, so I am avoiding the seeds at all costs. So I just want to point out for this particular recipe, I am not using Jiffy. I decided to make it from scratch as much as possible, so I'm using cornmeal and flour. But if you guys want to use Jiffy, that is perfectly okay. Other measurements for this recipe will work as long as you use at least 2 boxes of Jiffy. I recently switched to goat milk from 2% milk. I honestly feel like it tastes exactly the same. If any of you have tried it, let me know in the comment section. But if you do not want to use goat milk for this recipe, that is okay. Just feel free to use regular milk. Same goes for the buttermilk. You can replace buttermilk with regular milk if you'd like, but I can't promise it's going to be as moist. Y'all, butter is the crucial ingredient to this recipe. I melt my butter. You don't want to use room temperature. You want melted butter for this recipe. And I'm going to use a little bit of that melted butter to add to my cast iron. And I'm going to let the cast iron sit in the oven as the oven preheats. Next, you're going to add your cheese and jalapenos to the dry mix and just mix that up as well as you can. You can see I'm using my hands just because it's easier. I'm not sure if any of you have ever had cornbread casserole, but typically there is corn kernels in the casserole. So I thought I'd add that to this recipe just to add some more moisture. Speaking of adding things, I thought I needed a little more jalapeno, so I added an additional jalapeno pepper. Again, you know I like to give you guys options. If you don't want too much jalapeno in there, feel free to only cook with one, but I wanted another one, so this is totally up to you guys. Just a friendly tip, when you are making cornbread, make sure you add the liquid to the dry and not the dry to the liquid. As you can see, I am mixing to ensure that there is not a dry piece in that mixture. Try to get rid of all those lumps, but you'll see some of the lumps are from the kernels, from the cheese, from the jalapeno, but you know what I mean. Just try and make sure you cover all those dry spots. That was my attempt at trying to stir in the melted butter gradually, but I clearly didn't do as well. But I would say as you guys are stirring that in, maybe pour a little bit of butter in at a time and then continue to stir until all the melted butter has been added. At this point, the cast iron is nice and hot and ready for you to add your batter. You'll notice as you add it that the edges become crispy. That's exactly what you want. And don't be discouraged by the butter at the top. It's all going to seep into the bread. Be sure to keep a watchful eye on your skillet just to make sure it's not burning, but I assure you that the 40 to 45 minutes is perfect. I didn't have a toothpick to test this, but if any of you have baked before, you'll know that if you poke a knife or a toothpick through and it comes out clear, it means that it's ready. Next up is the sweet potato cornbread. I'm actually going to be cooking them in a muffin pan today just to give you guys some versatility on how you can cook your cornbread. So you want to make sure you peel this and chop it up and boil it in some hot water. I used a fairly large sweet potato, but I only used about 2/3 of it, so I wanted to compare it to a medium-sized sweet potato, and that's what you guys would need for this recipe. So this was my fault. I wasn't recording when I started to make this sauce, but I just want to let you know that I started off with some melted butter and brown sugar, and then you'll see the rest of the ingredients that I add. So you're just going to continue to whisk that until it gets to a syrup kind of consistency, and then once it does, just keep it on low heat for a few minutes. So I am using Jiffy for this recipe, but literally only the mix and eggs, and you will see the additional ingredients that I add. So for this recipe, you're not following the box instructions. So you just want to get rid of those clumps in the dry mix before you add the rest of the ingredients. So just like my jalapeno cheddar recipe, I am preparing a liquid base and a dry base for this cornbread. So this is obviously the liquid base, and you'll see everything that I add. I definitely recommend using a larger bowl. I'm just low on mixing bowls right now, but it was a mess, guys. So use a larger bowl if you're going to use a mixer. Just like with my jalapeno cheddar recipe, I'm adding the liquid to the dry mix. So go ahead and stir all that up to get a nice little batter before you bake it. So you can definitely grease your pan with some Pam or any other cooking spray, but for me personally, I like to use a little bit of melted butter just to add some more moisture to my cornbread. This particular pan size, I measured about half a cup, give or take, of batter for every muffin. And just like before, be sure to keep a watchful eye on your muffins. As you can see, they have begun to rise. And once you've completed your baking time, go ahead and poke a toothpick through to see if it's ready. Next up is the blueberry cornbread, which is my personal favorite. You'll see I'm using Jiffy again just for the mix. No need to follow the directions on the box, just like the sweet potato cornbread. You'll notice for this recipe, I am not creating a dry and liquid base to mix together. I'm really just adding the egg directly to the dry mix, and I'll add my buttermilk as well. Only because there's not as many ingredients in this recipe, so it's okay to just mix everything as you go. Just like with my other two recipes, I am adding melted butter rather than a cooking oil. As you add your other ingredients, you're going to let it reduce on a medium heat to create a syrup-like consistency. Now y'all know I love to mention a game-changing ingredient, and for this particular recipe, it was definitely the lemon zest. Lemon juice, lemon extract is not going to cut it for this recipe. Go ahead and grate you some lemon in there and let it reduce in that syrup. I promise you it's going to be delicious. Once you've melted down your butter to a syrup consistency, you can add it to your batter and mix it up. So I'm going to go ahead and let that butter melt in the oven as the oven is preheating to 400 degrees. And you'll see that I'm using a small casserole dish for this, just to give you additional options on how you can cook your cornbread. Just like before, go ahead and bake as recommended. And once you've reached a point where you think that it might be done, poke a toothpick through to see if it comes out clear, and then you're all set. Well, here it is, everyone, Tay's cornbread sampler. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and learned about some new ways to spice up your cornbread at home. Please, please, please try this recipe and let me know what you thought in the comments section. And as always, thank you so much for cooking with me.